should we just go? I think we're going to get started. This is a group of institutions represented here on stage that I've worked with for the better part of my time at STEMconnector. And when we added this component to our network pretty early on, I didn't know where it would fit because it just seemed like our focus was on K-12 STEM and employers. And then realizing, like, you know what, there were some other networks out there at the time that we really need these higher ed folks in the room because they are the connective tissue to employers and the K-12 system and do a lot to serve both systems. And that role continues to evolve. So I'm very excited to have an esteemed group of folks here, and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very quickly and also the sort of the institution a little bit, as most people have heard of all these institutions, but gives folks a little bit of a thumbnail on size and history. So right here to my right is Dean Olga Bolden-Tiller, who's Dr. Bolden-Tiller, who's Dean of the College of Agriculture, Environment, and Nutrition Sciences at Tuskegee University in Alabama. Martha Fernandez, moving down, is Senior Director Employer Resource of the Employer Resource Center for Dallas College, which is in Texas, formerly Dallas County Community College District. They consolidated. And then moving on down is Dr. Michael Heithaus, who's the Executive Dean of the College of Arts, Sciences, and Education at Florida International University in Miami. And this group has been, I think you guys have been, we've been talking about this panel outside, we've been talking individually through this week. Interested in, if you can just kind of give me a little bit of a thumbnail give the audience a little bit of a thumbnail of what you're doing, what your role is in your institution, and then we can move into some discussion.
So as he mentioned, Dr. Olga Bolden-Tiller at Tuskegee University. And when people think of STEM, they don't always think of agriculture, but of course, agriculture is the oldest science. And so when we think about STEM education, and really when we think about outreach in K through 12, a lot of that work is done through our outreach and extension programming at colleges and universities. And so Tuskegee University is a land-grant institution, has a three-part mission: teaching, research, and extension and outreach. And so we really work very hard to make certain that we are working in communities to make certain that we are impacting the thought process of next generation workforce development. And so we're doing it through 4-H, FFA, Junior Manners, and other organizations like that. But we're still doing it with the express purpose of thinking about what is the workforce need for tomorrow. So when we look at the statistics that 65% of preschoolers are going to have a job that doesn't currently exist, we've got to be thinking forward in terms of what that is, and then making certain that we're partnering with industry so that we can kind of help shape what that future looks like. And so excited to talk a little bit about that today.
Awesome.
Martha Fernandez with Dallas College. I'm really excited about being here, and a lot of the themes that I was thinking about discussing today have been discussed on the other panel. So Dallas College has been around for over 50 years, serving the community. As Ted mentioned, we recently consolidated into one. We still retain our campus names at Richland, Eastfield, all across Dallas County. On average, we touch over 120,000 students, credit, non-credit, workforce students. And so our department needed to exist to just help an employer and industry navigate the plethora of things that we do. And within the last decade, the policies within the state have also shifted to where we're really encouraging students and families to help their students choose an endorsement in 8th grade and 9th grade. And Dallas College has also expanded our offerings within the high school space with our partners, because we all know that the future for those 65% of pre-kindergartners is going to require some type of post-secondary credential. And the attainment rates in our community are not very high, specifically for our students of color. And so the community college, Dallas College, has partnered with most of our independent school districts within the county to offer more early college high schools, P-TECH programs, and partner with industry earlier, sooner rather than later. And I think this is so important for STEM because a lot of our students are not thinking in 8th grade, what does it take to be ready for a STEM career? Not really finding themselves or feeling like they belong in science and math. I think about myself as well. I'm an alum from Dallas College. I'm just decent at math, but it never occurred to me, like, I should go into that field. I'm in it now, and I work with a plethora of other industries, but STEM really is our future. Even if you're not majoring in science or math, I mean, manufacturing, I think all of those things have been named. And so in order for industry to be better partners with us in the high school space, and sometimes now even in the middle school space, they need a navigator. And so I manage an entire team that helps our employers navigate not only our system, but also our partnership with the high schools.
Awesome.
Great, and I'll get some more time to talk about FIU when you have a drink in your hand in a few minutes, so I won't go too long, but we are a public institution with an enrollment of about 56,000 students, so although you may not have heard of us that much, we are one of the biggest universities in the country. We're a Hispanic serving institution. We're also very young, which to me is great. It means that there is no way it was always done. We are always creating it, and that's something that higher ed's going to have to do more and more. I have been dean now almost 10 years, and I've been under like 4 different structures in that time as the college has changed its composition to meet the needs that we see out there. And right now, I think one of the exciting things is this bringing together arts and sciences with all that traditional STEM with education that has those teacher prep programs, because what we're really looking at is an entire ecosystem around the STEM workforce. You're not going to do that just by infusing things in K-12 unless you've got great teachers that are passionate about STEM in the K-12 and can take the resources that are being developed and put them to the greatest use, but then to be able to have those students transition into the colleges and colleges to university. So we have each one of those pathways, and then leading out of the university into the workforce, into further education. So it really is that opportunity to play an incredible role in generating new knowledge, solving the problems, helping create that new 65% of jobs, while we're also preparing students to do that. And I think the other last piece before we get to the specific questions that's really important is we're really thinking about how do we prepare our students to not have to come back for continually another bit of education, another bit of education, another bit. The world's going to be moving too fast to step back and take another class, whether it's online or whatever. You're going to have to be able to keep on top of it and want to keep on top of it. And so it's that sparking curiosity and inspiration for lifelong learners that are going to really help build this ecosystem that's going to drive our economy and a sustainable and just world in the future.
Yes, if only there was an initiative launched recently about inspiring joyful learning experiences.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So, Dr. Bolden-Tiller, wanted to, I think, on riffing on the announcement today about the importance of mental health, and when we were prepping for this panel, this was an area you talked a lot about, was, you know, the last couple of years exposed, they probably were there, a lot of mental health challenges that face students during these post-secondary years. And you guys took a very active approach in helping to mediate those. I'd love for you to talk about that, and also on behalf of the students, on support of the students and faculty that you work with, but also helping employers better understand those challenges.
Yeah, so one of the things, particularly with STEM careers, a lot of those spaces, they're really isolated, you know, when you really think about it. There are a lot of isolated type of technologies and workspaces and what have you. And during COVID, we saw even more of that. And so as we work with students and help them navigate STEM and ag STEM spaces, one of the things is that we saw that there was a negative impact, as we saw, you know, with, you know, workforce and what have you, in terms of people feeling a lot isolated, trying to figure out how do they navigate spaces, how do they connect. And so one of the things that we thought was very important was to make certain that we were working with students. And then, of course, we had students who were transitioning into jobs. And so traditionally, you had an internship, you had a mentor, and you had a connection. But during COVID times, as students transitioned into jobs, that structure was just not there. And so we were able to serve as a resource to really get to the nitty-gritty, if you would, of kind of what are some of those challenges and really help work with employers to say, hey, these are some of the things that we're doing in terms of creating spaces, having these virtual and digital communities, and things of that nature, so that students wouldn't feel so isolated and so that they could also continue to progress. Because again, it was all of a sudden, and many students in this generation really had not had any of these large challenges, I would say. And so having these challenges for them was something very new. And so we were very excited to see how we could work with that. And so again, a lot of these virtual communities we had, creating these safe spaces for them to talk about what the challenges were, and making certain that we had individuals that were there for them to talk with and interface with. And being in agriculture, the cool thing about ag is you can be outside. And so one of the things that we were able to do across our entire university community was to create these community garden spaces, because you could still be together but be spaced out. We also had some animal interactive days, so that we had what we call mental health days. So there was no class, and so we were able to bring out the goats and bring out puppies and put them in main campus and have students and what have you interact. And so we saw an increased number of students who wanted to have emotional support animals as well. And so we were able to connect with our College of Veterinary Medicine in order to help kind of support some of that also.
Awesome. Yeah, I always think I have a friend who I joke with when I'm really down that I wish I could rent a cat. I need to just sit on the couch. Animals
I have a COVID dog if you want.
Well, so on the sort of thing about going to employers, Martha, that's what you do at Dallas. And what always has struck me in our partnership with Dallas, and we stay in touch like we do with all of our institutions, and I get updates, and it's just this customer-centric approach to dealing with employers that is sort of different, I think, for Dallas College and how the infrastructure that you've created. Could you talk a little bit about that Employer Resource Center and some of maybe give some examples of how you guys are engaging those folks?
Yeah, so we mentioned the reorg, and that was really a big emphasis in the reorg, was for us to be better partners to industry with the outcome of getting more opportunities for our students. We've obviously looked at some of our data. There's room for improvement in making sure that we're really providing access both to our employer and our talent, but also to our students in that early on experience. I mentioned us partnering with more ISDs and early college high schools and PTECs, and we're graduating a lot of students that have an associate's. Our employers aren't always hiring them because they don't have any prior experience. And so one of the things that we're really focusing on and working on with employers is how do we increase internships, experiential learning, apprenticeships. We've gotten lots of dollars from the federal government, from private aid institutions, employers, that they want to expand internships and apprenticeships. That's a lot of what my team is doing right now. Is my team supports all of our different schools we've kind of broke them down into disciplines. We have got the School of Manufacturing and Information Technology, the School of STEM.
MTMS.
Yeah, that's a long story. We kind of played with the acronym, but it's STEM. We called it ETMS. Letters. We've got our School of Health and Sciences. And so my team really divides and conquers in working with employers to figure out what are those specific skills that you're looking for. And how do you feel about offering a partnership with our high school students our first-year students, our second-year students, and just figuring out what is that sweet spot for employers. Because employers are banging down our doors every day as soon as we opened our shop to say that they needed talent yesterday. And I'm like, well, awesome, we've got lots of talent. You know, we serve about 100,000 students a year, but we need help catching the attention of our talent. That's really the challenge we're faced with today is, yes, we serve a lot of students on an annual basis. They're not all looking at that manufacturing job. They're not all seeing themselves in that IT role. And so we're really walking hand in hand with that employer to say, hey, I see that you posted the job, but it doesn't have a wage on there. How is a student going to know how, like, I want to apply to that because it makes X amount. So we're really coaching the employer to communicate with our students at all levels, because we have a very diverse range of students in all aspects of that word. A lot of Gen Z, and they require a customized message. Like, this is for you. and so it's all of us also learning, you know, what every day is trial and error. I'm like, just try it, you know? There's no such thing as a wrong answer. It's like, let's just try to see what works for industry and for our diverse audiences, and that's really what we do on a daily basis in my team, just troubleshoot with the employer. And I always tell the employer, we've never done it, but let's try it. There's no such thing as a bad idea, just no ideas. So some ideas are better than none. And we're just finding ourselves in an interesting time.
There's a person in a blue suit who I know wants to show you something after this. So she has a product we've been working on. That's great. I think the more that you can, go to employers and meet them where they are, I think that is a strategy for deeper employer engagement, similar to the Let Us model that y'all do with Corteva Academy. That was a success story from one of our innovation task force meetings back in the day. Dean Heithaus, FIU has been really trying to leverage a systems-based approach to change this challenge we have about, I'm sure we all had really engaging STEM teachers in our post-secondary, every single one of them. None of them got up in front of a room and lectured and expected you to retain all the information. So how are you changing that? We have this issue where we know that sometimes there's the drill and kill model, there's the just right on the board, or the handouts, and how do we engage students in a way, and how do you help faculty become, how's FIU approaching that big problem?
Well, I think one of the things is first taking a whole systems approach, and there are lots of good ideas that come up out there, but then your students end up playing Russian roulette with, do I get a faculty member that teaches in a really engaging way? And we got to get rid of that. We need all our students to do it. I think we heard in one of the earlier panels the question of, in the CHIPS, are we just getting a workforce and we're taking it from somewhere else? So what we need to do is generate a much larger STEM talent pool. And part of that is getting them excited, engaged, and the Sage on the Stage method has been shown by research to not work. And I think it's that research-based approach we've taken that's really important. Developed a STEM Transformation Institute that brings in the sciences, engineering, and education research. So we can actually do the experiments and see what works and what doesn't, and always be willing to innovate and try. And then have ways and incentives for faculty to pick up those best practices that we develop in that research so that we can transmit that across all of our sections. And we've seen in some of our math courses that combination of the good pedagogy, making it relevant to students. Your pass rates go from 30% to 70%, and that 70% does better in the next class. So it's learning, it's not just making it easier. And I think one of our models we've developed that's been really fantastic is our learning assistants, where we're bringing in students. Maria is here, senior biology major, and so she and our other learning assistants actually are teaching our undergraduates in an inquiry-based model. They're not getting up there lecturing, they're giving our students problems, and the students have to figure it out for themselves. And the thing that we all know is when we get stuck with something and we have to work at it and we figure it out, what do? We remember it. If we just hear it, we remember it for the test, it's gone, well, for me in about 10 seconds. Other people may retain it better. And so we've created this model where students have to work at it. They're facilitated by near peers. And then we could even drop that down into the K to 12 and have our undergraduates also working in high school. And so it's not seen then in STEM, we heard about science identity, as something that's done by someone old, white, and male. It's somebody that looks like them, that's from their community, and they see that they can do it. And so I think that kind of systems approach, the support from administration, faculty developing the techniques and buy-in and working with our graduate students and undergraduates has really helped us move the bar in a huge way. And we know that what we're doing today may not work tomorrow too. So we can't ever be complacent and say, hey, this is the best practice. It's the best we know now, but we need to keep looking. But then we have to kind of adaptively move around the curriculum as we patch one hole. Where can we go next? Where's the biggest problem? Kind of always be looking. There are probably some chemists out there. Where's the rate limiting step now? I'm a biologist. I hit my breakage allowance in the first day of organic chemistry, which is why I'm not a chemistry major.
It happened to us all.
Yeah.
I was on the way over here driving through DC, and there's a few people that have driven with me before, and I was in a hurry, so
How many are left?
Yeah, there might be some DC police showing up soon, or park police. No, but so we're I'm listening to NPR to kind of take the edge off, and this person says, well, his father. Why was his father disconnected? Because his father before him was disconnected, and his father before him was disconnected. And so these counter-cyclical type of interventions are really important. So I've always found that learning assistant model to be something that really is powerful and can be replicated, similar to a lot of the things we've been talking about today. I think one thing that distinguishes all the institutions on this stage, even though you have a HBCU 1890 land-grant institution represented by Dean Bolden-Tiller. Martha represents an enormous community college district that also now in the state of Texas offers four-year degrees in high-demand areas. You have a public research university, recently one of the newest R1 institutions in the country. But you're all minority-serving institutions. And how does that, what can you say to employers in particular, or for folks that are working with employers? What are ways to partner with MSIs? What can MSIs bring that PWIs, predominantly white institutions, cannot?
So I think in the previous panel, Bo mentioned that it's so important that there's that connectivity to the minority-serving institutions. And so I can speak to the historically black college and university. So Tuskegee University is Tuskegee University. I mean, it's well known because of its historic legacy with George Washington Carver and leadership of Booker T. Washington. But at the end of the day, it is a land-grant institution. It is a historically black college and university. And it is still fraught with marginalization in terms of being underfunded in a very rural space. And the reality is, with a lot of these institutions, we don't get the connectivity to industry. We heard the previous panel talk about in Idaho, in New York, in all of these spaces, but we have people who have interests and passions in STEM in these rural areas, and they are minority. One exciting thing about HBCUs, for instance, we have a very heterogeneous population. That means we have diversity of thought. When we look at a lot of larger institutions, particularly predominantly white institutions, there's a certain model, a certain set of individuals that are allowed into those institutions. They think a certain way, they have to have a certain pedigree. At the HBCU, we don't see that because we foster individuals being able to be thoughtful about challenges that are within minoritized communities. And because of that, they have to think differently because a lot of those resources are not available, okay? And a lot of the challenges that those communities face, they exist because of historical reasoning. We had a collaboration, we were working with Iowa State University, and we were working with some producers, and we were talking about heirs property. And so heirs property is when there's no will, and you have this challenge where, you have a lot of heirs who have to figure out what to do with the property and the land. And the farmer from Iowa was like, well, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. Why don't they just have a will? And I said, well, it was only a generation ago or so that we couldn't have contracts. So we couldn't literally could not have contracts. And so now you have these challenges that persist because of these historic issues, and that's just one of them, right? And so we have to have people who understand what the problems are so that they can think differently and tackle these issues differently. And so that's one of the benefits of the HBCU. And again, a lot of them have historically served underserved communities, which have a lot of their own unique challenges. And so there's a lot of history and information that we saw during COVID that is needed, that had been within marginalized groups. And so we were able to come to the table and address questions. And it's only now that those insights are being valued because they have been there. And so now resources we're seeing increasingly being put to support those institutions. And the more resources that are there, the more we'll be able to take the country forward and address a lot of these issues.
Hard one to follow. Untapped talent. I mentioned a lot of our students come to us and oftentimes they don't finish because they're not seeing that opportunity at the other end. And so we need employers to be with us from the very beginning, showing to our students what does it look like to be in your field, to be in your profession, and working with us to create those experiential learning opportunities, internships, apprenticeships. We have a lot of funds right now. There's a huge investment from the government where we could even go in half or all to convince you to hire that IT intern, that biotech apprenticeship. But we also need you to have some skin in the game and help us build it. We are not the biotech experts. You are. And if you don't partner with us, we're going to lose an entire generation of a workforce that could have worked for you. But they did not know that you existed, and they did not know what you were building, and they were not there with you building it. Our community has had a lot of broken promises. And we talk about what's happened in the past, and we can't overlook it. We've got a lot of members in the community whose parents had private loans. They never got the degree. They're still paying it off. So they don't necessarily believe in the promise of college. We are having to reinvent what that means for our community, and we really need our industry partners to show that there is an ROI at the end. But we need to show it at the beginning, and we need to build together. And so that's what we offer, is this limitless opportunity, 100,000 plus students a year that we're able to touch, but they're not always making it to you because they don't know about you. And so that's what our department offers, is that opportunity to build something with you, with our students, for our community. Because if we don't, then we're just creating these cyclical cycles of people that can't go to work for you because they didn't gain the skills. And I think it's really incumbent upon us, like everybody in this room. I have a stack of cards for everybody. I made sure I brought the big stack of cards. We need IT partners. We need partners in this new biotech space that we're building. We have $8.8 million for the DFW region, so not just Dallas. We talked about the rural areas. This is money that we got from the EDA just a couple of months ago, so we're still hiring the team. But the goal is that we build it with biotech industry, not just in Dallas, but we're partnering with Tarrant County, Collin County. All of those community college districts are going to be building with industry. That's the important part, and with the community colleges. And then we're also partnering with 4 universities. When we talk about partnering, like, we really mean it. And I know that it may be, I'll give you guys this heads up, because I'm not originally from higher ed. I actually come from government relations. Higher ed moves a little slow. It's going to require a little bit of patience, but we're working to move faster. And we can't move without you guys.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I completely agree with what you heard from the other panelists, but I think for me it comes down to a few things that I think scales from the level of the individual students you'll see and the institution themselves. Innovation, grit, efficiency, and partnership. These are not institutions or students who have been handed anything. We usually are fairly under-resourced, which means we have to do a lot with not very much. And so the bang for your buck in hiring one of our students, I hear this again and again from our employers, that they will work harder than a student from one of those big name universities because they've had to work harder, and we have prepared them as well or better. And I think that a lot of that has been, we've fostered the partnership and kind of collaborative and interdisciplinary spirit that's there, that's going to make them, you know, the team leaders and bring new ideas, not just show up and punch a card and kind of do the job as defined, but be thinking about how to reinvent it as it goes along. And I think that entrepreneurial spirit is really important, but it also means that industry investment in MSIs, you're going to get a lot more out of it. I would pretty much guarantee it. I mean, I kind of look at some of my colleagues at other institutions, and they just sit back and collect the money and think, what can the community do for them? We are all thinking about what can we do for our communities. We aren't just thinking about how does it build the university. We're thinking about how does that help the families, the communities of where our students are coming. And so that impact tends to be much more even localized. So you look at FIU, and our local impact far exceeds most big flagship universities because our students stay there and they make an impact in the communities. They don't just kind of disperse everywhere. So I think, you know, there's great value proposition that MSIs bring to the table that has been largely overlooked in the way that we do rankings. And I think as you look at some of the new rankings that are out there that are based on, you know, economic opportunity, value added, you start to see those MSIs leaping over some of the more traditional top ranked, which are based on reputation, where, you know, this is a little inside baseball, but literally where some universities have high ranked programs that don't exist. So that tells you kind of what's going on. We're here to work hard, and we're so proud of our students and the faculty and partners that help them go on to great things. But we are always looking for how we can do a better job getting our students to be the excellent employees that are going to develop the next generation of products and take companies to the next level.
Like Princeton's law school. Well, thank you all very much. Those were great. Really, I love how each one of you kind of covered a different aspect of that question. In the interest of time, I think we can wrap up and we can continue this conversation down the street. I'm going to leave my colleague Amy Etten to close things out. But thank you all very much. Can everybody give a warm round of applause?